All right, I want to welcome everyone to this meeting of the Northern New England chapter of SABR. I am Bruce McClure, the chapter chair, and we always hold our meetings in conjunction with the Gardner-Waterman chapter of SABR, Dr. Clayton Truder, chair. First off, I want to thank everyone for voting in our referendum to rename the chapter after Brooklyn Dodger and Maine native Clyde Sukeforth. Voting ended on Sunday, January 21st, and with 92% of the vote, the motion carried and will be presented to SABR's board of directors in conjunction with our proposed bylaws, the draft of which will go out to you very soon. Once that gets in your hands, we'll be scheduling a meeting for comment and discussion before going to a ratification vote. So watch your email for a copy of those suggested bylaws coming very, very soon. Now, in the big news of the day, the National Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum in Cooperstown has announced 3 new members who will be enshrined this summer, along with Jim Leland. Former Boston Red Sox Adrian Beltre, Joe Mauer, and Todd Helton will be inducted July 21st. And we're going to have a little discussion of the electees tonight because our guest of honor, Alex Katz, unfortunately couldn't be with us this evening. So we're going to reschedule him at a later time. So everybody, let's have a little diamond discourse. Let's talk about those guys who are going into the Hall of Fame. Any comments to begin? Any thoughts? You can unmute at any time and just jump right in. Silence. Am I going to riff?
Oh, I'm here.
Donna,
so
go.
I just hopped off of a call right before this with Baseball Connect had Dan Evans on as a guest.
That guy? Wait a minute. That guy?
That guy.
Dan Evans. Hi, Dan. I hope you're watching, man. How you doing, buddy? Go ahead, Don. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. So he shared an Adrian Beltre story that I'm now going to share because I just thought it was so cool. So Adrian was with the Dodgers when Dan was the GM.
Yep.
And he was like 22 years old and in a horrible slump and coming up on the trade deadline. And Dan went over and was like, what's going on? He's like, the rumor mill's going, you're going to trade me. And Dan's like, not going to trade. She's like, well, that's not what everybody else is saying. He's like, well, guess what? I'm the guy who makes the final decision. If I'm telling you you're not going to be traded, you're not going to be traded. I'm never going to trade you. And he was like, really? And he said you could like see the weight like lift from his shoulders. And then he went off on like a crazy tear for the next, for the remainder of the season. He's like, and he never forgot that. I never forgot that. Dan booked his Cooperstown accommodations, a couple of months ago, knowing that he's going to go in. So they're going to be in Cooperstown together celebrating. So.
Oh, that's a fabulous story, especially the fact that Dan's going to be in Cooperstown this year to see Adrian get in. The joke there earlier about me riffing on Dan Evans. Dan Evans is a good friend and has been a mentor and an encouragement in starting this chapter, as has Clayton Truder and a few others. Bill Nolan is here tonight. He was one who was very helpful in getting this chapter started as well. And Dan's a great guy and is the chief operating officer of the Field of Dreams. And if you want to see something special, go to his website and take a look. It's really something cool. Any thoughts? How are we feeling about this with Jimmy Leland, Adrian Beltre, Joe Mauer, Todd Helton? How are we feeling about this?
Well, personally, I think Todd Helton is sort of the most interesting one in a way because, speaking from being probably the youngest person on this call, Todd Helton was to me, Todd Helton was the Colorado Rockies franchise as was Mauer for the Twins. So like growing up, like that's who I identified when I think about the Colorado Rockies growing up. I think of Todd Helton. When I think of the Twins, I think of Joe Mauer. And so when you talk about who's going to be in the Hall of Fame, a lot of it is about statistics and whatnot, of course, but also just the ancillary impact they had on their franchises, and can you tell the story of the Minnesota Twins in the 2000s and 2010s without Joe Mauer? I don't think so, and I don't think you can do that 2007 Colorado Rockies run where they won 22 out of 24 games in the year, and Todd Helton was an MVP caliber player that year. So I think that's where That's where I go with Todd Helton. Is he was the most interesting one of the bunch because of his impact on the Rockies franchise. Although you can make the argument he's not even the best Rocky ever. I would say that's probably Larry Walker. So to me, he's the most interesting of the three in terms of his candidacy.
And Walker's in too. Walker was
right.
SpongeBob himself. Walker's in. I got the chance to see Joe Mauer play when he was in AA with the New Britain Rockcats years ago. And that family, I can say, based on firsthand knowledge, they were salt of the earth, delightful people. You felt like when you were in Joe's presence, even as a youngster, that you were in the presence of someone who was going to be great, and he certainly didn't let us down. Part of the knock against him is his move to first base over the years, but I think that even with the move to first base, if you look at his character and his sportsmanship over the years, two things that a Hall of Fame writer is supposed to be taking into account when voting, he's a stone cold lock. He's a terrific choice for the Baseball Hall of Fame, and for kids of this generation, the previous generation, and several to come to look up to as a great catcher and leader in Minnesota.
Absolutely. And I think, I don't quote me on Mauer in particular, but I think at least Mauer and Helton were both not just amazing baseball players. Like, they had a choice going into their pro careers of what sport they wanted to play.
That's correct.
Bill knows I've been writing about Lane Adams, who of course didn't have a Hall of Fame baseball career, but he chose baseball over basketball and probably didn't choose wisely. Todd Helton was a starting quarterback at the University of Tennessee,
yep,
and somehow decided, I'm going to play baseball instead of football, and now he's in Cooperstown as a result.
I want to shift gears for just a second here because I just thought of something. Our friend Karen Holleran is here this evening. Karen, I want to get your feeling for just a minute here, because your guys who won 76 games last year, Karen's a Pirates fan, if I recall correctly. Am I right, Karen?
Yes.
I thought so. For once in my life, I got it right, Karen. And your guys signed Aroldis Chapman today. How's everybody feeling about that?
Well, I don't know. I really don't know.
Really?
Because
Okay.
I've been doing some work on some other projects, and I just kind of.
Do you think now? I don't know how closely you follow the Pirates, or if you've decided to ignore them for your own mental health, because I know I would if I were a lot of fans.
Well, I have a rosary, then when I know that they're going to be on.
You know what?
I mean,
Prayer always helps. If it doesn't really help, it'll at least make you feel better. But so, I mean, do you think Chapman's going to help him at all? Do you think Chapman's going to push him over the hump to 500?
I don't know if anything's going to help them.
Oof. Oof.
I
Well,
mean, they've been so wishy-washy for so long. I kind of I've been working on some other things, so I don't want to say anything bad, but I also want to say I'm really disappointed
okay.
in a lot. I was surprised though to see Jim Leyland be in the Hall of Fame.
Well, let's talk about that for a minute, because Jimmy Leyland got his start managing the Pittsburgh Pirates. How do you feel about his election to the Hall of Fame?
He was my neighbor.
Wait a minute. Hold on here. Wait a minute. Okay, so we just opened up some stories. He was your neighbor?
So was Franco Harris. So was a bunch of other ones.
All right. So what we've learned here is that Karen
Pittsburgh.
lives in a high end of town. This is cool. Okay, go on, Karen.
No, but when you live in Pittsburgh, it doesn't matter where you are. You're going to see somebody who's either a Pirate, a Steeler, you know. So, I mean, my dentist was a dentist to the Steelers.
Oh, wow.
I'm waiting for the Mario Lemieux cameo.
Right? Right. So I mean, tell me about Jimmy Leyland. How do you feel about his inclusion in the Hall of Fame?
I'm glad. I think he's a very down to earth person. I mean, I look at him from a different perspective too.
Well, tell me that perspective.
I just think that as my neighbor, so was Mr. Rogers, so I can really tell you. He was very nice, very cordial. He wasn't flamboyant like Terry Bradshaw. My other neighbor was Franco Harris, so it was really, I liked him when I said hi to him and good luck. He was very cordial.
I think it's a great thing that he got in. He's a baseball lifer. He's a good guy. He's
Yes.
got what, 2 rings, I think, one with Florida, one with Detroit.
Yeah, I think so. I think he's down to earth.
Getting old, I can't remember. So I mean, I think it's a good thing that he's in. I find it to be a positive thing.
I know. I'm glad that he finally got in, acknowledged. You know,
How do you
but
think your Pirates are going to do this year? Give me an idea. What do you think? How many games do you think they're going to win?
I don't know. I really don't know because they either go up when they go down, and you think you're going to be really good, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, maybe.
Who knows? Who knows?
To be honestly, I don't know.
That's why they play the games. We're not
I
that
know.
far away. We're not that far away from spring training. What are we, about 3 weeks or so
Yeah.
from spring training? Can't wait.
But I mean, it's funny because when people ask about all these different people, and I'm just like, they're my neighbor. You know, it's like, it's weird because a lot of people didn't realize if you go to the grocery store, they're there.
Yep.
You almost hit them, they're there.
Dixie, you're up.
The only thing sure about the Pirates is they have the best ballpark.
Yes. They do.
Yes,
As
they
for
do.
today's vote, the 2 players that I adopted as my favorites starting in the 1990s when they came into the league were Scott Rowland and Todd Helton.
Mhm.
I'm 2 years in a row to the good.
There you
The
go.
surprising thing today's vote was that Mauer got in by 4 or 5 votes only.
That's correct. Yes.
Even though it was only his first time, that's true. But Helton got more votes than he did, which was kind of surprising to me. The other thing that was surprising was that all of the talk all day long about Chase Utley.
Yes.
I mean, I like Chase Utley. I hope maybe someday he'll get in, but it was like suddenly everybody found Chase Utley on the list.
Right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're all getting excited about him, maybe getting a lot of votes, and I couldn't see that happening over one vote season. But we'll see what happens next. The only disappointment today was that Billy Wagner didn't get in, or that Sheffield didn't get in. I was expecting at least one of those 2 guys to join the other 3, and they had plenty of room for it. And all day long, all the talking heads were almost telling us that at least 4 or 5 people were going to get in, and it wound up only 3.
Does anybody have the percentages for Wagner and Sheffield? I didn't get them. I just got the
Wagner
names
missed by 5 votes.
5 votes.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and last I saw, Sheffield was trending at 74.9%.
I think he wound up with 69.
Ooh.
Yeah.
69%. So
That means he was not featured on a lot of ballots that were not made known. That's a big number. I got the chance to meet Gary Sheffield years ago when he was doing a rehab assignment when he was in Trenton. And he wound up in the Britain Stadium one night. And I got to tell you, the knock on Gary Sheffield, from what I'm told, is that he was supposedly not a really nice guy, mean to writers. Now, I could be wrong. I don't know. But he could not have been more gracious to me or my staff or anybody involved with the Rockets in his one night in the Britain. Could not have been nicer. Was a real pro, and signed autographs for fans. Didn't duck them. So I always thought it was interesting to hear that he was really not a good guy when it came to the writers and whatnot. I might be wrong, but my personal experience was that good egg. But he was mentioned in the Mitchell report, as was I believe Manny Ramirez was as well, wasn't he? Yeah.
Yeah,
And
did we get a number on Manny Ramirez?
I did not. If anybody knows it or
Yeah,
can
I
grab
can't.
it
I
real
didn't
quick.
catch up either.
Yeah.
32 and a half, man.
Woo. Really?
Like,
Yeah, Sheffield,
Nice.
I got it right. Sheffield was 63. Andrew Jones, 61. Beltran, 57. Then A-Rod and Man. A-Rod's at 34. Manny's at 32.
A-Rod's still trending at about 30%. That's very interesting. I thought he would have.
Utley was at 28.8.
Really?
Yeah.
Ooh, that's a low total. I thought he was going to be a little bit higher than that.
Yeah.
Well, let's move into the controversial end of the Baseball Hall of Fame and the thought of it all and whatnot. We have two methods of thought when it comes to enshrinement in the Hall of Fame. And that is steroid users, no way. Steroid users, put them in. What say you, Saber? Give me an idea of what you think about these players, such as A-Rod, Sheffield, Bonds, any of them who were steroid users that are confirmed. And a hush falls over the crowd.
I don't mind starting, Bruce.
And
I
boy, Will, bail me out here,
think,
buddy.
I don't know. Well, I think I do add a little bit of an interesting perspective because of I was literally born into the steroid era, so to speak, and I think
Here he goes with the
overwhelming
age jokes
problem.
again. You know.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'll stop. That was my last one for the night. I think the overwhelming problem with this discussion is not that one side is right or wrong. It's that there's a little bit of a gray area that we sort of ignore if we like the guy or ignore if we don't like the guy. For example, I love David Ortiz. I think David Ortiz was my childhood. I have a jersey of him that's blurred behind me. That said, July 30th, 2009, he was not mentioned in the Mitchell report, and I love George Mitchell too as a Mainer, but he didn't include a lot of Red Sox in his report, despite being on the board of directors at the Red Sox. Now, he said there's not a conflict of interest, and I believe him, but that said, you look at a guy like Ortiz, he was good in the media, he was lovable, he was likable, he was a good father, a good husband, good, everybody loved him. And so they were willing to look past that one bad report from 2009. A guy like Ryan Braun or Alex Rodriguez or Rafael Palmeiro or anyone else who lied about it, unlikely that the media members who were lied to about it by that person are willing to put them in. I think if they were open and honest, they might have a better chance to convince some of those people one way or the other. But I think that gray area is really where it exists.
Well, let's talk about that gray area for just a minute, because if you go back to the 60s and 70s baseball, greenies, amphetamines, plenty of players indulged, and they're in. Some are not, but look at many of those 70s players. They've already said, there was they could grab a handful of them on the way to the field. Are we vilifying those ball players? No, we're not. But we go after steroid era players in an inordinate manner, in my opinion. I might be wrong. If somebody wants to tell me that I'm wrong, please do. But if we're going to turn a blind eye to those players in the 60s and 70s who said, yeah, I took greenies all the time, then possibly we should be reevaluating how we judge those in the steroid era. Maybe not. I don't know. But let me go to Alex. Alex Days, you're up.
And I'll raise my hand next we go here.
Thank you. So I think your point was that other people lied on behalf of Ortiz as opposed to him lying himself. So that was what my takeaway from that it was covered up. But I would say I view it as a deduction, and I would say for A-Rod, I mean, if people were so much better, like Clemens, A-Rod, and Barry Bonds were like in the top 5 players of all time if you didn't adjust their statistics. So even if you took off 20 WAR for their performance, they'd still be in the Hall of Fame by a large margin. So that's the way I look at it. I would just give them a penalty. Sheffield's more of a borderline case, or Manny Ramirez, but those 3 were the best players since World War II before you make any adjustment. It's not a real Hall of Fame until they're in, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, whether
that's a hot take right there.
Well, whether I like them, if you said, oh, you're stuck in the airport with one of them, you wouldn't pick any of those 3 people, but or Pete Rose. I mean, the greatest players that are not in the Hall of Fame are all big jerks, right? So to your point about what writers think, but it's not supposed to be a popularity contest, and I'm sure Ty Cobb and some of the other folks would had a similar reputation back in the day for various good reasons.
So that's a very good point. Well taken. I am one of the many people who are very anti-Rose in the Hall of Fame for a lot of reasons. He signed willingly away his right to be considered for the Hall of Fame. So as far as I'm concerned, that's on him. It's, once again, right, wrong, or indifferent here. This is SABR. We can all have opinions. In the end, we're all friends. Rose wasn't a good guy. We all know that. Rose bet on baseball. They've got him dead to rights betting on baseball. That's a clear violation. I looked at those posters every day in the clubhouse when I was working in the Britain Stadium. So I know that it's there and what it said. It's in plain English in big letters. He read it every day. Combine that with some of the accusations that have come out about Pete Rose after the fact that are just not nice. And I am not gonna name them here. If you want to go learn more, just search it. It's not nice. If you're going to hold it against him, there's other players that are being held out for the same reason. And there's one guy in Shrine that should be kicked out. I'm again, right, wrong, or indifferent, but Evan Katz, you're up, my man. How you doing, Evan?
Good. Thanks.
Glad to have you.
Sorry. My namesake couldn't make it. We're not related, so I don't know where his family is.
Huh.
So, a couple thoughts. One is, and you mentioned the Pete Rose thing, and it's a little discouraging when Pete Rose pops up. I'm not even sure how many people that are commenters on The Athletic or The Globe or whatever are even aware, Bruce, of what you pointed out, that Rose agreed to be banned from the Hall of Fame as part of the settlement. And
He signed a contract. Yep.
Also, I'm not sure other people know that or really understand that he was betting on the games. It wasn't that he was betting on baseball. So I think that there's maybe some lack of full knowledge. The whole thing about steroids, it's you can argue it a lot of different ways. And one of the interesting things that I've heard over the years is that at the time, until it wasn't illegal. In fact, it was, we all know it was rampant. And certainly there were advantages to people who took steroids. But I think the dividing line of when it was made illegal versus when it was winked at in some ways should potentially be considered, who like Manny Ramirez, Alex Rodriguez caught after it was determined to be a performance enhancing substance. Prior to that, I think it's open to debate. It's like you say, greenies and whatever else.
All good, all very good comments, all very interesting comments. Alec had a very interesting comment, and Alec can correct my quote here. It was something like, it's not a real Hall of Fame without some of those guys. Something along those lines. I don't want to misquote him, but I think am I close, Alec?
Yeah, I accept the Pete Rose carve out. I don't think I mentioned him in that. I think it was the other three.
No, yeah, the Pete Rose rant was mine and mine alone. I'm not sure that I'm on board by saying it's not a real Hall of Fame until those guys are in, because in each major Hall of Fame throughout professional sports, let's keep going to soccer Hall of Fame, volleyball Hall of Fame near my hometown in Holyoke, Massachusetts. There's always going to be controversy of somebody in and somebody not in. So, yeah, possibly we should be looking at how we elect those who are going in. But the Hall of Fame is the Hall of Fame. When I walk in there, my wife will tell you, I'm in awe every time, and I can walk around that place blindfolded. And when I get to that plaque, the Hall of Plaques, it's almost sacred for me. My poor wife, it looks at me like, good Lord, really? You okay?
Aspects of going at different times of the year and getting to take pictures in the plaque room, especially at Christmas. It's beautiful.
Yeah, they do decorate nice at Christmas. So yeah. William, the singular Highland. Will, what's up?
Thanks. Just to reiterate, I think once Alex said that, it like sort of put a bell off in my head too. I hear that a lot, and it's a completely valid point of view. And I think as somebody who grew up where these were the stars, I always joke with my dad, I wish I grew up in the 70s like he did, because I believe that was the best era of baseball, being a historian of it. But these were the people I grew up with. And so I hear that a lot from my peers, because they feel very sentimental about, these people that like Bonds, and to be quite frank, people even as further back as Clemens. I think, to reiterate his point though about it not being a real Hall of Fame without that, I somewhat agree in some way, because as I said with Mauer and Helton, can you tell the story of baseball without Barry Bonds? Probably not. Can you tell the story of baseball without Roger Clemens? It's pretty hard. The guy had 20 strikeout games. I think though, back to my point, like when the Mitchell report came out, I remember it was a very watershed thing growing up. I was like, oh boy, like to me it was like, the Watergate or something as a baseball fan. But there was something that Clemens did. He stood in front of, because they brought him before Congress, and he stood there with a bottle of water, and some of you might remember it, and he said, "Is this okay? Can I drink this?" And it was almost like his reaction to it, I think, sort of to my Ortiz point, was what turned a lot of people off to him in that. Whereas I think some people ingratiated themselves to their mistakes. And I think Mark McGwire tried. I don't know if it clearly hasn't been received well by everybody. But I do think, can you tell the story of baseball without those people? No. But you also cannot tell the story of their careers without that major black stain in a lot of people's eyes. So it does go both ways.
We'll move into the 2025 ballot in just a minute, but the lead guy in the 2025 ballot is Ichiro Suzuki, who is actually connected a little bit to Pete Rose, who had a lot to say about Ichiro over the years. So he was asked once, this being Pete Rose, was asked once what he thought of Ichiro's numbers and the fact that he was the world record holder for base hits in professional baseball. And Rose had a few interesting things to say about Japanese baseball and whatnot. And this winds up getting mentioned to Ichiro Suzuki, who, when told that Pete Rose denigrated these numbers, he said, "Who?" Which, my favorite story about Ichiro. I thought it was great. Evan Katz, you're up, man. Are you muted, my friend?
Although a couple of people have mentioned something that I think is worth noting about the can't tell the story of baseball without, and you can fill in the blank. If I'm not mistaken, the institution in New York, it's the Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum, if I'm not mistaken. And the Hall of Fame it's a near religious part of the building, but it's also a very small percentage of the building. And I don't know that the Hall of Fame intentionally keeps Pete Rose out of other exhibits. And I
No,
guess the
they do
question
not.
that I would have is, for those who have been to the Hall of Fame, you know, is A-Rod and Pete Rose and Manny Ramirez and, you know, Mark McGuire, are they in the rest of the Hall of Fame? Of course they are. So I think that we need to be careful to try to say that there's the Hall of Fame and there's the museum, and you know, it's also a reflection of the outcome of all the things that have happened to baseball over its 150 years. And as we all know, you know, it's a lot of grays, not a lot of black and whites.
I got a lot of grays myself up here, but that's another story altogether. Alec has a great comment in the chat. NFL and NBA Hall of Fames have a lot of bad actors as well. Baseball has a holier than thou image, in my opinion. And he's probably got a good point there. Donna, you're up.
It's actually, that comment is an interesting segue to the thing that I wanted to kind of throw out. This whole idea of writers can only vote for a maximum of 10 people at a time. I don't understand that logic. And I think it, as a result, it has kept people potentially out longer than they should be. Somebody said to me the other day, I don't understand how it is that Derek Jeter wasn't a unanimous Hall of Famer. And I said, well, I'm not going to get into whether he deserved to be or whether he didn't deserve to be, but it could just be that the vote went to somebody who, it wasn't, oh, I don't think he's deserving of my vote. It's, I want to give this other guy the vote so that he stays on the ballot, or so to bump his numbers. And the whole idea of the limiting it to 10 just is illogical to me. I'd love to hear what other people have to say about that.
That's a very good point. What does everyone feel about that? Let's talk about that for a minute.
Well,
Donna's got a good point of
question-
limiting it to 10 people. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Karen, you're up. Go.
Yeah, I was wondering, what amount of people do you think would be good to write about
Oh,
and
good
to vote
question.
on?
Well, I don't know. Why does there need to be a limit on how many you can vote for?
Well,
If
somebody,
you're a Hall of Famer or you're not. It's not
Good point.
these 10 are worthy and these others aren't. You are or you aren't. It's very black and white. So why can I only vote for 10?
good point. I was just asking, what do you feel would be the best amount?
It drives me crazy. It's like, oh, this year you think he is and next year he isn't, or oh, I didn't vote for him because I couldn't. I
can't vote for him this year because I got to vote for my other guy, but next year I might vote for him again. But the 2 years ago I voted for him. It's like, make up your mind, for crying out loud.
right. And then you have people lobbying for votes and I mean, not players, but the word on the street a couple of years ago when I was up at Cooperstown for Gil Hodges and Buck O'Neill's induction, which also happened to be Big Poppies, but that's a separate whatever. Word on the street was that even at that point, Johnny Bench was lobbying hard to get Mauer in as a first ballot Hall of Famer. And
yes. I've heard that story. Yes.
Yeah. And I mean, like Juan Marichal told me as I was standing there, and he's like, you know who's gonna go in? And he's like, oh, is this you? You know, this whole conversation is like, you know who's going in 2 years? And I'm like, no, because that's 2 years. Joe Mauer's going in. Johnny Bench is lobbying hard for him. Okay. And lo and behold, Joe Mauer is going in. And I think Joe Mauer is worthy of going in. But I don't know.
Will made a comment in the chat. Great points, Donna and Evan. And Evan comes back and says, thanks. Most of my opinions are stolen from MLB Network Radio. That's fantastic. I love it. Anybody
it's a
worth their weight
valid
in
point,
salt this chapter better be listening. What was that, Alec?
Well, but the average person only votes for 4 or 5 people, so it's not really a constraint at this point, right? I mean, some people vote for a lot of people, but if you look at the number of ballots that were submitted today, the average number of votes is 4.
That's
So
a very good point.
10 isn't terribly binding. I mean, one thing that was weird about Wagner, to the point about Wagner earlier, was that somebody said yesterday that 3 people took Wagner off that voted for him last year that still had room on their ballot, which makes no sense. Right, that like
What?
before, yeah, that he went backwards with 3 people in the public ballots.
What, he didn't send them Christmas cards?
I don't know.
That's nuts.
Yeah.
Crazy,
Yeah.
I think. But I
Bill,
mean,
you probably. Oh, sorry, Alex. Sorry.
no, I mean, I
sorry.
just think that they had 10. I think they thought at some point that, I mean, baseball doesn't change rules very frequently, even if they don't make any sense. So I think they thought it would devalue the thing and people would vote for 20 people or whatever. Maybe they should let you vote for 10 over time, and if you voted for 12 one year, you could vote for 8 the next. Like, I think that would be more interesting to say you should only vote for 10, but we'll give you a long-term average of 10, not a yearly average, not a yearly constraint.
It's an interesting concept right there. Not a bad idea. Molly, you're up.
This kind of ties into the vote and the plaques and all that. Bruce and I know the director of education at the Hall of Fame, and we've had some very interesting discussions over the years with him. And one of the big issues for the Hall of Fame is, they can't control the vote, obviously, because the writers do the vote. Their concern is figuring out how they're going to fit all the plaques in, because they're physically running out of space in there. And
the last time we saw Bruce, we had this conversation. Yeah. Yes. Yep.
And Bruce, not Bruce Marcuson.
That's me.
Sorry, honey.
That's me. Okay.
We have sat in the plaque gallery many times looking at the pillars, looking at, could they build it higher? Could they put it on the marble pillars? What used to be the old pharmacy in town, the general store, is now vacant. Could they expand and put, like the gift shop over there and make the plaque gallery larger? I mean, but that at the same time would detract from the plaque gallery because the annex wouldn't have that beautiful rotunda. And would those guys feel that, feel the feeling of how you feel when you walk in there? That it's a holy place, it's hallowed ground. If there's an annex, would you still have that feeling because there's no rotunda there?
One of the interesting things that I've read about the Hall of Fame this week is that they are having a funding problem right now based on contributions dropping significantly, and I think attendance as well. It's going to be very interesting to see how they invest in the upkeep of the museum going forward and how they're going to expand it as time goes along, because they are at a point where they're going to have to sit down and figure out how they're going to reconfigure the Hall of Plaques in an effort to continue hanging player likenesses moving forward. Alec has put a very good piece of information in the chat. 10 player ballots this year, 70. 9 player ballots, 22. 8 player ballots, 22. 7 player ballots, 35. This is number of votes, by the way, guys. 6 player ballots, 29. 4, 11. 3-player ballots 8, 2-player ballots 7, 1-player ballot 2, and this year no blank ballots at all. Typically, you see a few blank ballots every year. This year, none. So that's 32% of ballots cast as being full, while only 4.3% of ballots had 3 or fewer. That is per Ryan Thibodeau's tracker at Baseball Hall of Fame tracker.com. Will, what do you got?
This time I won't say anything controversial or talk about my age.
Well, now you can't go on. Forget it. Next, no.
All right. Well, in spirit of good baseball discussion, I chuckled there for a second because I didn't think anyone would top Karen's great name drops from earlier in the meeting, and then Donna just talked about meeting Juan Mirochel like it was somebody she had, like they were on first name basis. So that's pretty cool to me. But because talking about museums and great, when I went to San Francisco with my buddy and we toured AT&T Park, and there's, Marichel's got the leg kick. There's that great statue out there by the bay. I was like, that I was in heaven there. But to the point on it being almost like a near religious experience and all that stuff, that's completely true of Cooperstown. But I think that's what we, to Molly's point, that's what we can't lose in this discussion, is that to those of us who love baseball, that's what it is in some respects. And despite whether we agree or disagree on whatnot, I think that's where a lot of people get lost in this Hall of Fame discussion. It sort of loses its meaning because it becomes all about who's in, who's out, who's going to be in, who's going to be out, and less about the building and how much it can transcend, like people that are 3 years old all the way to 100 years old when they go in there. So I guess I'm just trying not to lose that, because I don't know, how long we can remember it for the way that it will be, unless it changes again.
That's a very good point. Donna has a great comment. She says she'd like to know how many of those who voted for 10 would have voted for more if able. That's a very interesting statement as well. Oh, hey, you know what? Northern New England chapter, we can riff. These things happen. We can riff. This has been quite a discussion this evening, and once again, we've got some heavy hitters up here. Donna, I mean, she's rubbing elbows with Johnny Bench and Juan Mirochel. I mean, I can't. Donna, if you go to the convention in August, I'm not going to be able to stand next to you because you're too high level.
No. Magical things happen in Cooperstown, period. Even more magical things happen in Cooperstown when you go for induction.
That's true.
Amen.
I think it's something that everybody should do at least once in their lives.
I agree. All right, so this Thursday, January 25th, we're going to be having round 2 of our Immaculate Grid tournament with the round of 8 beginning at 7:30. Links go out tomorrow to join us to watch the show, and we hope we're going to have a great crowd to watch some great baseball minds go at it. Round 1 was a lot of fun. I put that video up just a few days ago, and looking very forward to the round of 8, Thursday, January 25th, 7:30 Eastern Time. Now, next week, Monday, January 29th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, SABR's Director of Editorial Content and my good friend Jacob Pomranke will be our guest. Jacob has been a SABR member since 1998 and also serves as the chairman and newsletter editor for the Black Sox Scandal Research Committee. Last year, along with Dr. David Fletcher, Jacob published a new book with Rare Courthouse Records, Joe Jackson Plaintiff versus Chicago American Baseball Club, Defendant, the never-before-seen trial transcript. Jacob will be discussing Joe Jackson, the 1919 Chicago White Sox, and his fascinating research and findings. In fact, January 29th is the 100th anniversary of the beginning of Joe Jackson's trial in Milwaukee. You're not going to want to miss this rare opportunity to see a presentation from one of the foremost baseball researchers in our organization. It is sure to please all of us. Evan Katz wanted me to let everybody know that he shoveled Joe Cronin's driveway. I think that's pretty cool. Evan, if you'd like to come up and shovel mine,
Yeah.
I'm all over it.
I was only responding to Bill Nowlan's mention that he was Johnny Antonelli's paperboy. So
Oh, that's right. I see that Bill
Yes.
Nolan was Johnny Antonelli's paperboy. There you go. I missed that comment. So yeah. So I mean, really, I'm just a lowly furniture salesman in West Lebanon, New Hampshire. All of you guys have rubbed elbows with high level people. I'm just here hosting the meetings.
can I just do a little bit of shameless self-promotion that connects to the Northern New England chapter, since this is my first time joining you for a meeting?
Do it.
I recently, about a year ago, I wrote a biography of a Manchester, New Hampshire native, Mark Latondra, who went to the University of Maine and then was a assistant trainer with the Yankees and the Giants, and became a full-time trainer, and was ultimately the director of medical services for the Major League umpires for 20 years. When they combined the umpires, they needed someone to take care of their medical services, and he did it for 20 years. And the reason that all the umpires now look like linebackers started in 2002, when Mark started looking out for their medical care and the umpires started taking better care of themselves. If anyone wants to read his biography, he is a Manchester, New Hampshire native and a graduate of the University of Maine.
Awesome. We have several writers in this chapter, and I'm really thrilled to be able to promote and back them up, because that's where it's at with SABR. So
Oh, yes. And thank you to Bill. Yes, I should have credited Bill for sending me some information that I was able to include in the biography. Thank you, Bill.
that's awesome. All right. Well, this has been a really great discussion. I really appreciate everybody coming out tonight. I'll see if I can get Alex Katz to reschedule, but that's okay. These things happen. But let's get everybody out of here tonight. We'll see you Thursday night for Immaculate Grid, and then we're back at it Monday night with Jacob Pomranke. Can't wait for that. Thanks, everyone, for coming.
Thank
Have
you.
a great night.
Thank you, Bruce.
See you later. Thanks.